Hi there. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to identify the inversion, the root, and the quality or type of actual chords in the context of a real piece of music. So here we have a Bach chorale, and you notice that it's written for 4 parts. It's written for a bass, tenor, alto, and soprano voices. And so the bass part is in the bass clef with the stems down. The tenor part is in the bass clef with the stems up. The alto part is in the treble clef with the stems down. And the soprano part is in the treble clef with the stems up. Okay. Now we're identifying triads. And since triads only have 3 notes in them, and there are 4 voices, the composer will double one of the tones in the chord. And once you have 2 of the same letter name, you can just simply eliminate one of them to identify the chord. All right, so in order to identify the inversion, the root, and the quality, you want to take a look at all 4 of the pitches and just take an inventory of what's there. So in other words, just identify the letter names of the notes. Now don't forget we have a key signature here. The key signature indicates 2 flats. So every B and every E is flatted unless there's a natural in front of it. Okay, so with that in mind, I like to go from the bottom up. You could go from the top down, from the soprano down, but usually thinking from the bottom up is a good way to go because we tend to hear the chord in relationship to that lowest voice, the bass note. So here we have a G, another G. Now this is a B, but it's a B flat, remember. Because of the key signature, that's a B flat, not a B, but a B flat. If you don't account for the key signature, you won't have the right chords. So make sure you include every B flat and E flat in this example. And then D on top. Okay, now eliminate one of the repeated pitches. So just forget about one of the G's. Now the next thing you want to do is to put these 3 pitches, the G and the B flat and the D, in order so they're all a third apart from one another. Now because this chord is in root position, you're already seeing it that way. And what I mean by having all the letter names a third apart, from the G to the B is a third, G to the B flat's a third in letter names, right? G, A, B flat is a third. And then B flat to D, B, C, D is also a third. You want to make sure that you have the chord in root position with all 3 notes a third apart from one another. Then you can answer the questions, inversion, root, and quality. So the root is G. G is the root, B flat is the third, and D is the 5th. And remember, the bass note, and only the bass note, determines the inversion. So you want to look at the lowest sounding pitch. If the root is in the bass part, then you're in root position. If the B flat, the third of the chord, was in the bass, you'd have first inversion. And if the D was the bass note, you'd have second inversion. So here you're just going to simply put root position. Okay, then the quality, G to B flat is a minor third, and B flat to D is a major third, so that is a minor triad. And notice you want to go back to the root position chord to figure out the quality. All right, so G to B flat's a minor third, B flat to D is a major third, that makes it a minor triad. Now if you look, the next chord is actually the same chord. He has changed the soprano part from a D to a G, and the B flat and the alto to a D, and the G and the tenor to a B flat, and the G up an octave. But it is still G, B flat, D. There's 2 G's, right? It's actually the same chord. G, B flat, D. G is the root, as we said. The bass note determines the inversion. And here we have the root in the bass, so it is root position. And again, it's a minor chord. Minor triad. All right, the next one we're looking at is chord 3. And again, take it step by step. So the first step is to take an inventory of the notes that are present from the bottom up. So here we have an F sharp in the bass part. There's an A in the tenor, D in the alto, and then another A in the soprano part. There are 2 A's, so just simply eliminate one of them. It doesn't matter which one you eliminate. Just get rid of one of them when you're thinking about it in root position. Okay, next step. Given the notes F sharp, A, and D, how can you put those so they're all a third apart from one another? You want the letter names to be a third apart. Now notice F sharp to A is a third, but then A to D is a fourth apart. If you started with a D though, you would have it. D, F sharp, A. So take those 3 notes and present them so they're all a third apart from one another. All right, once you have all the notes so they are a third apart in the chord, D to F sharp is a third, and F sharp to A is a third. That is the letter names being a third apart. You know that D is the root, F sharp is the third, and A is the fifth. So you can go ahead and fill in the D as being the root first. Okay, next take a look at the inversion. The inversion is indicated by the lowest sounding pitch of the chord. So in this case, the F sharp. The F sharp is your lowest note, the bass note. Because the F sharp is the third of the chord, this is known as first inversion. So remember, if the root is the bass, like back here, the G was the root. If that's the bass, it's in root position. If the third of the chord is in the bass, here's the third of this chord in the bass, it's in first inversion. And then if the fifth of the triad is in the bass, it's in second inversion. All right, go back to the root position chord to determine the quality. D to F sharp is a major third. F sharp to A is a minor third. That makes a major chord, major triad. All right, here's chord number 4. We have a G in the bass and the tenor. When you have a note head with 2 stems on it like that, that just means it's being shared between the 2 voices. So the G is being played or sung by the bass singers and the tenor singers. So G in the bottom, D and B flat, and you should recognize that chord, we've already had it a couple times, as being G, B flat, D. Remember, you want to express the notes so they're all a third apart from one another. G, B flat, D. So G is the root. G is in the bass, the lowest sounding pitch, so it is in root position. And then the quality, as we said before, minor. G, B flat, minor third, B flat to D, major third. Okay, chord 5, we have the notes D, F sharp, another D, and A. So again, just ignore one of the Ds, you have 2 of them. Express these 3 notes so they're a third apart from one another. D, F sharp, and A. It's very important to make sure that you put the 3 letter names, in this case D, A, and F sharp, so that they're expressed a third apart from one another in terms of the letter names. So D to F is a third, F to A is a third. Then you know that you have the chord in root position. And D is the root, F sharp is the third, and A is the fifth. So D is the root of the chord, as we said. D is also the bass note. So remember, the bottom note, the lowest sounding note of the chord, determines the inversion. Because D is in the bass, it is also in root position. And then the quality of the chord, again, go back to the root position chord. D to F sharp is a major third. F sharp to A is a minor third. That makes a major triad. All right, chord 6 here. E flat, and don't forget, it's a flat in the key signature. Otherwise, you won't have the right quality. G, this is a B flat, and G on top. So there are two Gs. Just ignore one of them. Given the notes E flat, G, and B flat, you want to write them so they're all a third apart, and it's already presented that way. So E flat, G, and B flat. So E flat's the root, G is the third, B flat's the fifth. So the root's E flat. E flat is also the bass note, the lowest sounding pitch. So that's in root position. And then the quality of the chord between E flat and G is a major third, and between G and B flat is a minor third. So that does make a major triad. Don't be surprised if you get a lot of root position. You will find in real music there are going to be a lot of root position chords. You'll also find some inversions, of course, depending on the piece. You might have more or less inversions. Okay, chord number 7. C in the bottom, also a C in the tenor part, E flat, and A. There are two Cs, so just ignore one of them. Again, ignore the doubling. All right, now ask yourself, how do I put the notes C, E flat, and A so they're all a third apart from one another? C to E is a third, but E to A is a fourth. Try A, C, E flat. So you just sort of through trial and error, or you can just visualize it. You want to arrange the three pitches so that their letter names are a third apart from one another. So A to C is a third, and C to E flat is a third. So now we know that A is the root of the chord, C is the third, and E flat is the fifth of the chord. So the root's easy, it's going to be A. Now the bass note is the C. And remember, the bass note and the bass note alone determines the inversion. So in this case, the third of the chord, the C, is the bass note. That makes it first inversion. Okay, so again, if the root was in the bass, if the A was in the bass, it would be root position. C in the bass, first inversion. If the E flat was the bass note, it would be second inversion. Triads only come in root position, first inversion, and second inversion because they only have three notes. All right, now the quality. And again, always look back at the root position chord to determine the quality. So A to C is a minor third, C to E flat is a minor third. That makes a diminished triad. All right, here's chord 8. Now you will find the same chords more than once. And we've seen the G minor chord a few times already. We've also seen this chord twice before. Let's take a look at it step by step. So here we have a D, here we have an A, another D, and an F sharp. So again, ignore one of the Ds. Take the three notes and put them so they're a third apart from one another, D, A, and F sharp. And that would be D, F sharp, and A. So the root is D. The D is also the bass note, so that means it's in root position. And the quality, major. Now notice chord 9 is actually the same chord. D, F sharp, A, D. The composer has moved the D an octave lower, and the inner voices, the F sharp and the A, are changed, and also the soprano part. So it has been revoiced, but it is still the same harmony. So D is the root, D, F sharp, A. It is in root position because the D is the bass note. And remember, it's only the bass note and the bass note alone that determines the inversion. It's not the distance from here to the next part or how the chord is voiced above it. It is simply what note is in the bass. And as we said, some major triad. All right, chord 10, we have the notes D, A, D, and F. Notice it's an F natural. The composer did not necessarily have to mark it in because this is a different measure, but it's a cautionary. It's a nice thing to mark in because the last F was an F sharp, and now this is an F natural. So here we have the notes D, A, F, or in other words, DFA. So D is the root. The bottom note is the root, so it's in root position. And the quality, D to F is a minor third, F to A is a major third. It's a minor triad. D, F sharp A was major, D, F natural A is a minor triad. Now you can go ahead and skip chords 11 and 12. Let's go over to chord 13. Don't forget your key signature. This is a B flat, not a B. F, another B flat, and a D. B flat, F, D. In root position, it's B flat, D, F. So B flat is the root. The bottom note determines the inversion, the lowest sounding pitch. B flat is the bass note, it's the root of the chord. So here we have root position. And the quality of the chord, B flat to D, major third, D to F, minor third, that makes a major triad. All right, chord 14, we have the notes E flat, G, B flat, and another G. So again, ignore one of the G's. E flat, G, B flat, that's already expressed in root position and close position. Close position is where they're stacked in the most tightly packed way possible. E flat to G, G to B flat, all a third apart. So the root is E flat. The bass note is E flat, so it is root position. And the quality, E flat to G is a major chord. G to B flat is a minor chord. It's a major triad. Okay, chord 15, D in the bass, B flat, don't forget your key signature, D, and G. And you can see there are two Ds, so I'm going to ignore that one. It's actually probably best to ignore the doubling that's in one of the higher parts, because of course you want to make sure that you know the bass note, which determines the inversion. But just for figuring out the root position chord, you could ignore either one, but if you ignore the higher one, it's probably going to be better off. A little easier to think about. Okay, the notes are D, B flat, G. Well, in root position, when they're all a third apart, it's G, B flat, D. We've had this chord before. So the root is G. The bass note is D. That is the fifth of the chord. That makes it second inversion. So remember, if the root is in the bass, if G was the bass note, it would be root position. If B flat, the third, was in the bass, it would be first inversion. And if D is the bass note of the chord, it's second inversion. And the bass note determines the inversion. So look at the bass note. That will tell you what the inversion is. We've known this chord before. It is a minor chord. There's a minor third from G to B flat and a major third between B flat and D. Okay, chord 16, D, A, another D, F sharp. And you should recognize that one from before. In root position, it's D, F sharp, A. So D is the root. D is also the bass note. So that makes it in root position. It's a major chord. Okay, and the last one, G, the last one on this line, B flat, D, and another G. So ignore one of the G's. And again, we had this chord already. G, B flat, D. G is the root. The bass note is the root of the chord, so it's in root position. And G to B flat's a minor third, major third, that's a minor triad. So it's actually very easy to confuse the root of the chord with the base of the chord. The root is always going to be the first letter name when you stack it in thirds. When the letter names are all a third apart from one another, the first letter name will be the root of the chord. But remember, this is the root, this is the third, and this is the fifth. Let's look at the inverted chords just to see the difference. When the root is also the bass note, it's in root position. But when you have the third or the fifth in the bass, you're going to have an inversion. So again, remember the bass note determines the inversion. So back here in chord 3, we said the root was D and the F sharp is the third and the A is the fifth. The F sharp is the bass note. Because it's the third of the chord, that's how you know it's in first inversion. Same thing over here in chord 7. We said in root position we have the notes A, C, and E flat. A is the root, C is the third, E flat is the fifth. Because the bass note is the C, and the C is the third of the chord, that's why we have first inversion. And then just reviewing chord 15, we had the chord G, B flat, D, but the D is in the bass, and the D is the fifth of the chord, and that's why it's in second inversion. All right, please make sure that you complete the second line on your own. And you can also cross off chord 23. So go ahead, eliminate chord 23. That's actually a seventh chord, and we're only looking at triads so far.